Okay, so to be clear, the first two categories of methods for hair removal are considered temporary because although they remove the hair, they don't technically shut down that follicle's ability to produce a hair again. So the hairs will grow back over time the same way that they have always done. The third category of methods for hair removal on the face or body are considered more permanent, meaning the goal is to get those follicles to be incapable of producing a hair ever again or sustaining that growth, no matter how much the body changes or the hormones fluctuate. So under that third category of technically permanent hair removal falls electrolysis, I.P.L or intense pulse light, and laser hair removal. Let's dive deeper into each of those. With electrolysis as a permanent means for hair removal, it was a method that was developed first. It's been around for decades and has been perfected to the point where we're not seeing more advancement in that technology. It's pretty much plateaued at its peak. It works for everybody. It doesn't matter what hair color you have, what skin color you have, the age of the growth. It's going to work on everyone. It's a gradual process where we, the electrologists, are trained to find those follicles that produce the unwanted hair, and we utilize a very fine steel probe that we insert into the follicle, which is a natural opening of the skin. So we're not having to break the skin to get to the base of the follicle. We then release intense electric current that oscillates at a very quick speed. So it's a fraction of a millisecond. It is so fast. The technology is quite advanced that by the time we register discomfort, the treatment is over. So when we do that, we are coagulating the blood supply that sends nutrients and oxygen to the hair follicle to sustain the growth of a hair, and we're shutting that down. We're also destroying a little bit of the walls of the hair follicle and some germ cells that the follicle utilizes to grow the hair shaft. So when we do that gradually, the hope is that the hair follicle cannot sustain a growth anymore. So what it looks like to you as the client is you would come in periodically as quickly as the regrowth happens, and we would go in and we would tackle those follicles for you, and then we slide the hair out. So you leave the treatment with no visible hair, and we have to wait until those follicles reconstruct their walls, find a new means of sustenance, and grow another hair with what little germ cells are left to go back in and re-administer the electrolysis. The idea is eventually that follicle will grow a thicker, weaker hair, a hair that grows back a lot slower until it cannot produce a hair or sustain a hair growth anymore, and that's when we win. Intense pulse light is exactly what it's called. So it's a light that is very condensed, that is applied over the skin after the hair has been shaved, because the hair itself underneath the skin acts as a conduit to that energy. And remember, if we want to have any effect on the regrowth, we need to be talking at the dermal papilla level underneath the skin. So we want those hairs to be as closely shaven as possible, as close to the treatment as possible, because those hairs underneath are going to attract that destructive energy and bring it to the hair follicle. Now, with intense pulse light, unfortunately, as professionals, we don't always, or we can't quite guarantee, and we don't always see good results with it. And we're not sure, it's kind of hit or miss. So the technology isn't as sophisticated as it should be. It was a good idea to treat larger areas of hair growth than electrolysis, where we're literally going into each and every follicle. So areas like the legs or the arms or the back, it's easier to tackle with intense pulse light. But what we've seen over the years of intense pulse light therapy is that the hair at best grows back a little bit slower and a little bit weaker, but we don't think we've seen enough shutting down of that follicle's ability to produce a hair to where I.P.L becomes effective. So it may be a good treatment for someone who's trying to decrease the intensity of growth, and even that is hit or miss, but we definitely can't tout that I.P.L will shut down the follicle's ability to produce a hair. Now laser, for the purposes of this video, we're going to call it a light, but the laser beam actually falls outside of the light spectrum, so it's not technically a light. So basically, it's very similar to intense pulse light if you've watched my previous video, except for it utilizes laser energy. So laser is very monochromatic, and it travels in a very straight direction. And when we subject the skin to a laser, the hair, again, underneath the skin is where we want that energy to be attracted to the base of the follicle. And it coagulates off the blood supply, it burns the hair shaft itself, and it cuts off the follicle's ability to find sustenance to produce a hair. Now, not everyone is a good candidate for laser hair removal. What we look for is people with fair skin and dark hair. Recently, there's a laser that can help people with darker skins, naturally darker skins. However, we do need the hair itself to be heavily pigmented and thick. The thicker and the more pigmented it is, the more it's going to attract enough of that destructive laser energy to eventually shut down that follicle's ability to produce a hair. Now, let's compare laser hair removal with electrolysis. Technically, electrolysis is considered permanent, whereas laser is not. And that is not because laser does not work, but electrolysis does. It's just that technically, if we were to treat a large area with laser, provided someone is a good candidate, meaning their hair growth is thick and dark, we can clear the area, say in 10 to 12, maybe 13, 14 sessions max. But after a few years, maybe there are a few follicles on the legs that we've treated that still grow a very fine, weak hair. Now, the client is elated because they don't have to shave anymore or grapple with hair growth that they have to deal with after a series of laser treatments. But those hairs technically make it so we can't say that we've cleared the area. So you will still see very good results with the laser. It's just we're not in full control over that situation, whereas with electrolysis we are. So we never find ourselves in a situation with a potential client where we say, you know what, we've been treating you for X number of months or X number of years, and sorry, this is as far as we can get you. No, as long as we treat, we can get the follicles to completely shut down because we control how much energy goes into each follicle every single time. Whereas with laser, we try to establish that you're a good candidate, and we literally and figuratively put our protective goggles on and we sprint. Because if we stop in between laser sessions, whatever hair growth we see after the fact has no bearing on whether or not the laser treatment is working. Anything under 6 to 8 sessions is not a full series of laser hair removal treatments, so we have to do those before we stop to see what went on.